This is your Neepawa Town Council Debrief for the June the 8th, 2022 meeting. The debrief will take you through the key issues being discussed by Council and provide a bit more information on what they mean for the town. Because of the length of this week's Council meeting, we will again be airing it in two parts. And so we will have a separate debrief for each of the parts. This is part 2. So the second half of the Council meeting is dominated by a presentation on the town's water and sewer rates proposal for 2023 to 2025. CAO Colleen Sinchishin summarizes the documentation that she prepared for the Water Services Board, which includes a background on Neepawa's facilities and what the proposal means for ratepayers in the Neepawa area. The presentation covers how the system operates overall, from the well sites right to distribution, and the major factors going into setting the rates, including new upgrades and technologies, water sales, both domestic and bulk, and water storage and sewage needs. The incremental increases being proposed are relatively minor across the board, with the increase ranging from about $13 to $30 a year for most domestic users. The proposal also covers the proposed rates for bulk or industrial users, as well as the pipelines that go into the neighboring municipalities.
So this is to set the rates for 2023 to 25 for the water and sewer infrastructure for the town of Neepawa. And this process actually is very lengthy, hence submitting it in June. Anticipating it to be back and ready for January is very optimistic, although the modest increase we're looking for would propose that maybe we would get a favorable review from the Public Utilities Board. I also know, though, that when you send things to the Public Utilities Board, you don't get in there in favor of you want a better application. You have to sit in the queue. So we'll see where we get with it, because the last time we submitted, we were in the queue for 2 years, maybe. But we also went over and came through a lot of hurdles at that particular time, having had to meet the public sector accounting board standards, and also collapsing our rates from a 4-step rate to a 2-step rate. So the rates were last revised in 2017 by the Public Utilities Board Order 15/17 and Utility Rate Bylaw number 3145. In PUB Order 15/17, they supported collapsing the 4-step rate structure to a 2-step rate structure for water and a single-step rate structure for sewer. We also came into compliance with the Public Sector Accounting Board standards for the inclusion of amortization expense for capital assets and the amortization of grant funding. Those are requirements every municipality has to meet now. So that particular PUB order covered the period of July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2020, and there has not been a change to date. Partially decision made in-house for the fact that we were not running deficits, and we also were going through COVID. So because we weren't running deficits and we were fairly successful in sustaining the utility, a decision was made to take the time post-COVID, or at least at the end, to get our application in for 2023 to 2025. So to talk a little bit about the utility system, give people an idea of what it means. We draw our water from the Assiniboine Delta Aquifer by way of Hummerston well site. It actually has 3 wells at that site, 24 kilometers southeast of Neepawa. And we also have a second well site at Oberon. There's 2 wells at that site, and it's 19 kilometers south of Neepawa. We have an operating license, and it's based on a Class 3 water treatment plant and Class 2 water distribution. Our treated water is stored, at least up to this point, in ground at 2 reservoirs at the plant. We have a storage volume of 1,257 cubic meters of water. We also can store 2,180 cubic meters of water at the water tower. Right now, as we all know, we were trying to complete our new reservoir. It's nearing completion, and that will increase our storage by another 2,800 cubic meters of water. So roughly, by the time we're done, we're going to have 6,237 cubic meters of water storage, which would be almost doubling what we have before the reservoir. Customers projected for 2022, we're looking at having about 1,526 water and sewer customers, 55 water only, total customer base of 1,581. For 2021, we actually had about 1,550. So we're projecting with the new homes and whatnot going up, we're going to add at least 31 more customers. And then just for interstate, and I think there was a little posting on our website one time to see if people could guess how many fire hydrants we service. We actually service 209, and we will be adding more as we grow and increase the housing. Talk a little bit about the sewer system now. You see the little toilets there. Sewage is collected by way of gravity and pumped through 5 lift stations owned by the town. But we also have 4 additional lift stations under private ownership that pump to our system. So up until 2021, the town system emptied into a facultative 3-cell lagoon system with 1 primary and 2 secondary lagoon cells. As per our licensing requirements, treated effluent is discharged annually into the White Mud River. Given the age of the lagoon cells and the lack of space for expansion, the town began in 2016 to pursue a design that would incorporate mechanical treatment aspects to a reduced footprint size. The new treatment design will allow for treated effluent to be continually discharged, as opposed to an annual storage and discharge process. So this kind of gives you a little idea of what we're looking at. The picture in the middle, right at the top, shows you these cells that we have. We have 3 of them. They take up quite a large area. When we went to more of a mechanical design, we're actually going to be able to get rid of the cells on the exterior, and we're going to repurpose the one in the middle. So the picture at the bottom, even though you can still see a large water body at the top of the picture, the idea is the area that's been renovated or at the bottom of the picture is more of what we're going to adapt to our use and run the water in through a system to a building that will treat it and aerate it and whatnot and send it out more mechanically into the White Mud daily. So phase 1 of the project, which we did complete, it was following a pilot project that we completed in the winter of 2016-17. The pilot proved very, very successful, and we decided to go to a full-scale design. And it's called a moving bed biofilm reactor system, and it will represent the first of its kind in Manitoba and Western Canada. So we're quite excited to proceed to phase 2 this year. So phase 1 involved the rehabilitation of the first secondary lagoon cell with a new clay liner and berms, as well as the construction of the treatment facility. Phase 2, which we're starting to work on and hopefully go to tender very shortly, it will complement phase 1. It will implement the full MBBR system and the decommissioning of the primary and secondary facultative cells. Aeration will be installed in the reformatted main cell, as well as the addition of ultraviolet components for wastewater treatment. Sludge removal will be completed to clean up the decommissioned cells to enable their repurposing for stormwater retention and a compost site. And as spoken a few years ago, we actually proceeded into the bylaw stage for a possible debenture on this project for phase 2, and that was approved and it's in place for if we have to actually proceed to a particular borrowing stage. So when we look at what we do for water in Neepawa, I think a lot of people get confused about how we sell water. We actually sell water here by the cubic meter. And what does a cubic meter of water mean? It basically, if you go down a few bullets, it means equivalent of 1,000 liters of water. So if you took a 1 liter bottle of water that you might drink several of daily, a cubic meter of water is 1,000 of those. You can also take and equate a cubic meter of water to mean you can take 13 baths with a full tub. You can do 14 loads of laundry. You can take 28 showers. You can flush your toilet 111 times, unless of course it has a leak, and then you flush a lot less. And you can probably make or drink, 1,759 pints of beer. So it's a fair amount of water. So once you understand how much water a cubic meter is, we actually sell our water in cubic meters in Neepawa. So when we do our domestic water sales, we sell 354,576 cubic meters of water. So that's 30.28% of our water. If you look at the wholesale rate, 59.51% goes to wholesale, 696,932 cubic meters. Bulk water at plant, 2,978 cubic meters. When we do firefighting or line flushing or anything particularly involving the town, could be watering the cemetery, we meter all of that. It comes up to 53,885 cubic meters or 4.6%. So all of the water that we sell and can actually account for is over 1 million. What we cannot account for, though, is 62,706 cubic meters of water. And those sometimes quite often are leaks or maybe something that's not tracked. So that's 5.35% of our water. The Public Utility Board standard is 10%. Anything greater than 10%, you really have to take some time and delve into why, what's gone wrong. If you've got aging infrastructure, or you're not tracking something. So we are well within the limits allowed by the Public Utility Board for a mature utility. This is just a graphic of showing you the numbers you see in the previous chart based on what it looks like, you know, if you had a pie and sliced it up and where the water went. So it was just more of a visual. This next chart talks to you about, though, of the water that we can account for, we return to the sewer 33.76% of our water. That's all. 66% of our water does not go back to the sewer. So those numbers are very important when you start looking at how you're going to pay for the production of your water, the distribution of your water, and who's going to pay for the sewer for those costs as part of the added-on to those that have sewer as part of their charges. Not return to the sewer, that large number also would include places like High Life, for example, who are a majority of our water users, but they return their water to a sewer. They don't return it to our sewer, though. They return it to their own plant known as R3 Innovations. So it's just kind of an interesting fact to see where the water goes. When doing an application, you also look at your capital projects. So to build in your costs and how you be sustainable, you have to make sure that you can cover your operating, your supplies, your equipment, your capital projects. So for 2022, even though my rates will be based on 23 to 25, just to give you an idea of things we're currently working on, is the water reservoir funded by reserve and grant. We still are going to portion about $2.2 million to that project. We have launched ourselves into a water supply study. It's going to be a valuable $90,000 cost shared with the Water Services Board because as we all know, when drought conditions hit, we can't always guarantee the aquifer is going to have the supply we need. The lagoon upgrades for phase 2, even though we might spend upwards of $6 million, we're portioning that across the next few years to make sure that we can fund that. So it'll be paid through by borrowing and for grants. And of course, we do annual water treatment plant upgrades, looking at about $200,000 to make sure everything's operating. We also do a 5-year plan, looking at, this would be specifically more projects 23 to 27. And of course, we would be finishing off our lagoon upgrades for phase 2, so we would be spending another $1.7 million. We're going to do $200,000 in each of those years for water and sewer renewals and water treatment plant upgrades. We're looking at actually, at the completion of our water supply study, we're actually looking at having a 3rd site in addition to Humberston and Oberon, so that should we need to have one particular well site offline, we have an extra for backup and we should have a constant supply. So that $2 million we're targeting for the year 2025 approximately. We're looking at installing a meter pit at the High Life boundary just for better tracking as they grow and we grow, just better information. We're going to also prepare to look at the relocation of the Mill Street lift station. So targeting, that might be a 2-year project depending on when that happens. And I guess the importance of that one was when we flooded in 2020, we understood that Mill Street lift station was older. It was actually in risk of flood. We had to do mitigative measures to make sure it didn't flood. So we think by moving it out of the location it's on, aesthetically it'll also be in a better position, not particularly directly on the street there, but in a location where we can protect it and defend it should any more flooding occur in the future. And then of course we're looking at, once the reservoir is up and running, we've had this project in the queue for many years, just could never slot it into a particular year to achieve it. Probably $1.6 million to actually refurbish the water tower once our reservoir is operational. And that'll be in the year 2025, if not sooner. That's just where I slotted it. So then, taking all of our infrastructure needs into account, the sustainability of the service, what we currently supply, we have to look at the categories of how we charge people. So the administration costs are shared equally across the customer base by way of a service charge, if you look to the far right in the descriptive column there. So when you look at the administration component, if everybody was to pick up their bill right now, they're going to notice on their bill they have a service charge. That service charge is constant for everybody and is the exact same rate for everybody, no matter how you slice it, because whether you're purchasing mega amounts of water or very little, you're still using the same administrative time. You know, all of those things that go into forming the administrative rate. So we need to find in the year 2023, for example, recover costs for $143,000. And then you look at water production. So we have users that maybe don't use any of the distribution system in town, the water lines, but they have to pay portions of how we get our water to us, how we treat our water, how we store our water. So for example, we sell water to the RNs of you know, Rosedale and Langford. We sell water to High Life. So even though they get their water more directly and don't run their water through all of our systems, they pay a wholesale rate. And they pay towards the cost of producing and treating the water. So we have to come up with $1.4 million. When you look at water distribution now, these are the costs to send the water through all of the system. And it gets added to the wholesale rate to reflect the domestic rate. So everybody living directly or using the water directly in Neepawa pays towards the distribution system, and we need to find $357,000 for that. And then if you just look at the sewer users now, based on who returns water to the sewer, we have to find $533,000 for that. So, and that also includes the lagoon. It's based on volume of water used. So just to give you an idea of where we were at from a few years ago, because the rates did not actually go up. Our rates for 2022, and were the same since 2019, were a quarterly service charge of $19.75. And if you look at the domestic, every domestic user, for the first 450 cubic meters of water, you can charge $2.36 per cubic meter. If you look at the wholesale rate, once you get 450 cubic meters of water, then you get charged a lesser rate of $1.32. Those that return water to the sewer get charged $1.40 to return it to the sewer, and then of course anybody purchasing bulk water will get charged $2.72 a cubic meter. The increases we're proposing based on incorporating all of those things into sustaining the utility and balancing the budget is suggesting that in 2023 we need to add a few dollars to this quarterly service charge for all of the increases in the administration fee. One of them in particular being the addition as well, trying to mentor for management position over at the water plant. So there's added costs for having extra staff over there and a succession plan. So that, even though it reads a 13.92% increase, dollar-wise it isn't significant. Of course, $23 in 2024 and 2025 will be also $23. So zero increase on the service charge in 2025 and 2.22% in 2024. If you look at the domestic water for the first 450 cubic meters of water, we're proposing exactly the same rate of $2.36 in 2023. Moving to $2.39 in 2024 and $2.41 in 2025. So just better than 3% over that 3-year period. And if you extrapolate that to the 5 years that actually there hasn't been an increase, pretty decent increase, very minimal. If you look at the wholesale rates, we're going from $1.32 to $1.35, which is 2.27% increase, then to $1.37, which is another 1.48% increase, and then to $1.38, which is 0.73. So once again, very minimal increase based on the number of years that have passed. Sewer is going to increase from $1.40 to $1.42, which is a 1.43% increase, then to $1.57, and it is a 10.56% increase. But I guess the only comment I would make on why it would be 10% in the year 2024, based on the accounting board standards that we had to implement and put into the last application, when you include all of your amortization of your capital assets into the plan, and at that point our reservoir will be completed, and more particular in the sewer, our lagoon will be completed. We're going to be adding about 10 to 12 million worth of infrastructure into the amortization, which is driving up the ability to have cost recovery and set aside money for future planning. So that's why the 10% increase in 2024 on the sewer side. Then back to $1.61, which is a 2.55% increase in 2025. As far as bulk water, just because of the way things fleshed out in the rest of the rates, we're actually going to see a small decrease from $2.72 per cubic meter to $2.58 in 2023, rising to $2.60 in 2024, and then $2.64 in 2025. So to give you an idea what all those numbers mean, if you were a customer that had a minimum quarterly bill, you never used your full allotment of water, you're allowed 14 cubic meters on that particular water bill. Otherwise, you start getting into paying additional rates. So even if you use only 12, you still get the standard bill. You use 6, you get the standard bill, but you can use up to 14. So under the current rates, you were paying a quarterly bill of $72.39. So looking at forward to 2023, paying your service charge, paying your water charge, paying your sewer charge, you're going to see an increase of $3.02 a quarter, which is 4%. In 2024, you're going to see another increase of 4%, which is $2.97. And then in 2025, you're going to see a 1% increase, so 86 cents more. If I take that and extrapolate it now to a full year, what are you going to pay in a year? Right now, you're paying $289.56. You're going to pay in 2023 $12.12 more than now. Another $12 more in 2024, and another $3 in 2025. So even though that's 9% over 3 years, if, like I say, if you go back to where the last rate was changed in 2019 and add 4.5, 5 years into that mix, that's less than 2% a year over that time period. Just a few additional examples. So the first one is kind of important because the 43.9 cubic meters per quarter, this is what we see on average in Neepawa of users of our system. The average user uses 43.9 cubic meters of water per quarter in Neepawa. So if they have standard annual charge of $739.26 using that amount of water, they're going to see an increase of $14.51 in 2023. Another $33 in 2024, and another $10 in 2025. So still pretty decent. They are a larger user of the water, so of course they have to pay for the volume they use. Another example would be somebody that uses 500 cubic meters of water per quarter. They'll pay an extra $57 in 2023, $360 in 2024, and $118 in 2025. So keeping in mind, once you head over the 450 cubic meter, you do get a drop in rates to go from the domestic rate to the wholesale rate, so the increases look a little different there. And then of course just the last one that might equate to somebody that might, you know, run a larger user. I don't know, I didn't have an example in mind when this one came on here, you know, maybe a laundromat or a car wash or something. And in fact, they probably use more water than this. An added $357 in 2023. And $1,380 in 2024, $418 in 2025. So when you look at the percentages all across the board there, whether it be 1, 2, or even the highest of 6, depending on which particular year you're looking at, for a 3-year period, it's pretty decent. Also, the PUB likes you to take a look at what surrounds you. Look at all the other communities and where they're sitting at. And it's not to compare insofar as trying to be like them, because you have to run a sustainable utility based on the infrastructure that you have in your community and the age of it and where you're at and where you're positioned. So the thing I would note on this chart, we sit in the middle, we did last time. So using the average user of 43.9 cubic meters of water in Neepawa at 753.77, we're right plunk in the middle. What is notable though, that is going to be our proposed rate in 2023. If you look at the right hand, or the left hand side there, sorry, you're going to note that all of the rates, Brandon even stems back to 2018, they haven't had a rate change since then or put in an application. And everybody else is, runs up to 2022 rates what we're now. And we're proposing to still be in the middle at 2023. So I'm suggesting that anybody that's lower than us possibly is going to hike over top of us, and we probably could be positioned more in the top third of that chart as opposed to the 50% mark. Just to mention, we also have some special rates in our utility application. We sell water to the municipality of North Cypress Langford and the rural municipality of Rosedale. We have agreements with them by way of bylaw. They currently pay a rate of $1.84 per cubic meter, so as much as that sounds less than what people in town are paying, I cannot charge them for the cost of running water through our distribution system because they don't use the distribution system here. So their costs are basically the full rate per cubic meter for the producing of the water, and then I'm able to charge them half of the distribution rate, which would equate to then the lines that actually go out to the pits that, where they would receive their water at the distribution points. So they're going to go to $1.86 per cubic meter in 2023, $1.88 in 2024, $1.90 in 2025. And these changes result in about 3.23% over the 3-year period. What I'll also note on sending water into the rural RMs is in our agreement, when we do any significant upgrades to our infrastructure, they come on and they pay a proportionate amount of the cost of that infrastructure. So based on the fact that they get 150 cubic meters of water from us a day, it equates to 2.78% of our water supply out of the plant that we can produce. So they will be paying, for example, and they've been aware for 2 years now when we started to look at building the new reservoir, they will be paying 2.78% of the infrastructure cost for that. So anytime we have a big upgrade, because there is no other way for them to contribute to those costs, we do charge them an extra cost under the authority of the bylaw. Another thing we had to look at was lagoon tipping fees. We know there are people in town that might not be connected to the sewer system, but they do send their sewage there. So we have to be prepared to know that there are costs associated with building a lagoon and running a lagoon. So the current rates are yearly use of $60 for residential, or per use fee of $12. $240 for commercial, or a per use of $48. So we're proposing the rates to go to a yearly fee of $71, which is $11 increase, and a per use fee of $14.20, which is $2.20 increase for residential. And of course, I'm not going to read through all the rates here. The important part is at the bottom. The rates were last set, because when you set the tipping rates, you don't normally set them year after year after year. You just set the rate and call that the rate. So the rates were last set in 2017. And the new rate now that I'm proposing reflects an increase of roughly 3% for the years 2018 to 2023, and mirrors the increase in the sewer rate for that same period exactly. And these rates will be in effect for 2023 to 25. So in summary, the proposed rates reflect sufficient revenue to maintain a safe water supply and promote conservation. Takes into account the necessity to protect the environment by not losing sight of the commitment to addressing wastewater concerns and infrastructure requirements, supports self-sufficient utility operations, incorporates funding to ensure capital utility requirements can be met in a timely fashion. The rates are competitive with other jurisdictions, and they do provide us the capacity for future growth. Our recommendation is that Council support the proposed water and sewer rates. We do have a bylaw requesting first reading very shortly, and that we will be sharing the changes once you approve the bylaw. If you approve the bylaw with the public, we'll do it through newsletters. We're going to share it with our large volume users to make sure that they are aware and communicate with them properly. And we're going to ask, because in an effort to save costs, that the Public Utilities Board consider a paper review process for this, as opposed to the public hearing process and then the big notification process that normally is involved, simply because the rates are very favorable and not significant increases. So just a little slide, and I guess I would just draw your attention to this and the importance of this being, you know, if you sell your water, everybody looks after it. If you give it away, nobody looks after it. Any questions?
Also covered in this half of the meeting were the votes on bylaw amendments covering the water rates proposal, as well as the zoning amendment covered in part 1 of the meeting. A revised bylaw on vehicles for hire, and a note that the neighboring town of Minnedosa is beginning to recover from the flood and could now use volunteers to remove the sandbags. You can view end-to-end coverage of the town council meeting elsewhere in the NAC TV schedule, including immediately following this. This week's council meeting is divided into 2 parts, so be sure to check them both out. If you miss one, they are also available on the NAC TV YouTube page. We welcome your feedback on this program, and if you have questions or items that you'd like to see discussed or clarified, you can reach us at 204-476-2639 or by email at nactvnews@gmail.com. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.